with a ton of great people getting out to Gwent Challenger 5 this month, we at Team Aretuza thought it was an excellent opportunity to talk with some of those who work to make the event the best it could possibly be. So while the players were getting spruced up for their matches, we sat down with a few fine folks for a chat about them, their roles, and the event itself.
Hello everyone! Welcome to another of the interviews that Team Aretuza is doing at and for Gwent Challenger 5. I am joined by none other than Flake, one of the casters. Let's start by you introducing yourself, because I think you're still pretty new in the casters team.
Yes, so I am new-ish, I guess you can say. I've got 2 events under my belt. Prior to this, I was the host of Challenger 4, and then I was the caster alongside McBeard in Gwent Open 8. So this is my 3rd event for the Masters series, but I've casted a bunch of stuff and hosted a bunch of events prior to this. But this is the big leagues, right? So this is my 3rd official CVPR event.
Speaking of you being a caster for the first time at Open 8, you replaced someone such as Mogwai. Have you felt any pressure, any stress about replacing someone such as him?
Well, okay, so replacing Mogwai, you can't replace Mogwai. That's like the first thing that I should probably be very clear about, is that there's no replacing him. I'm not Mogwai, I'll never be Mogwai, there will never be another Mogwai. The stresses I feel in terms of filling those shoes, I'll never be as loud as Mogwai. I don't intend to ever go down that route. Mogwai was phenomenal, and I don't feel pressure because I'm not putting myself in a position where I'm replacing Mogwai. I myself, I've always been myself, I've always been comfortable with who I am, and confident in my talents and abilities. So what he brought to the table was phenomenal, and he did an excellent job with McBeard for so many events. What I'm gonna bring is not necessarily what he brought. I bring my own energy, enthusiasm, and all that jazz to the broadcast, and so pressure and intimidation and whatever, not at all. I've looked up to Mogwai. I still, talk to him on rare occasions. I still follow him, and I'm proud of what he's accomplished up to date and what he's continuing on doing. But I'm here to be myself and do my own thing. That's
an amazing approach, to be honest. Going back to Challenger 4, you were hosting that event. Was there anything specific that you had to learn in order to transition from being a host to being a caster?
Yes, I honestly thought that I would never be a caster, not because I doubted my own talents or abilities. I just thought that hosting and interviews and that kind of thing was that was my jam. That was what I was really, born to do. When I started casting in other capacities, I fell in love with it, and that was exactly what I would do, and that's why I pursued it. So what is the difference between hosting and casting? I think a lot of it is that when you're a host and you have to discuss the outcomes of matches and interview people, you're not necessarily interacting obviously with the game, you're interacting with different personalities, and some of them are not as lively or responsive or open as others are. If it was up to me, I would interview someone like Tailbot every single time, because he has such a big personality, and he plays the game, right? Like he is the guy who is able to play the role of the superstar player, and he likes to answer questions in an upbeat way, whereas there are some other people who are just generally shy. So the challenges are different from casting to hosting. When you're hosting, you have to navigate personalities. Sometimes they don't want to give you much, and you have to dig, and you have to know and be very intuitive to when to push for certain questions, what's off limits, etc. And sometimes you do not even know what the person's personality is until you get there. With casting, it's a different story, because you are reacting to what's going on. So the knowledge that you need is less of a people person intuition and more of a knowledge of the game and really understanding what's going on. So I'm glad that I have both of those under my belt, hosting an event and casting an event. And if asked to do either, I really love casting, but I would host another event in a heartbeat.
All right, thank you. Speaking of the casting some more, one of the most, I think, important parts is, for one, doing well with your partner, but also kind of coordinating when it's starting to get too much and trying not to maybe shout over each other. How do you and McBeer kind of find the balance in that?
Right. That's a very interesting thing. And a lot of that just comes from building chemistry over events. And what I'm lucky enough to say is that I've known McBeard for many years. McBeard's wife is essentially like practically my sister, my best friend since I was 3 years old. So her and I have grown up together, and he's like family. So I've known him prior to Gwent, and we would hang out and, develop a friendship and almost this kind of bond where we know how to play off each other, and we know when to respect each other's space. When he wants to drive, I'll give him the wheel, and when he knows that I want to, take a point and really elaborate on it and drive at that point, he'll let me go on that route. So a lot of that comes from just the years of experience of just knowing each other and interacting on a friendship basis, but also with practice. Every game that we cast together, it builds towards that chemistry. There's also a lot of visual cues where he tells me to sort of, relax. But there's scripts as well. I mean, whenever there's information that CDPR wants us to talk about, like reveals or leaks or whatever, they give us the information, and we kind of parse out, you say this, I say this, you say this. One thing I'm not a fan of are scripts. Like when someone says, this is what you say, I'm like, well, that's not me. I will convey the information in my own way, and we kind of bounce back and forth about how we're going to go about doing that. So we're natural in that sense. But again, experience and, just the fact that him and I are good friends in real life, and that's how it works.
Thank you. Speaking of CDPR giving you stuff to talk about, when you receive the deck lists, how much time does it take you to sort of remember who is playing what and against whom?
Right.
Stuff like that.
So the first thing I do when we get the deck lists is I essentially ransom them to the other players to fund my drinking in Warsaw. That is only partially true. But in reality, what happens is when we get the deck list, we get them usually about 4 or 5 days in advance, and then we put in a lot of time to study it. And as soon as we get them, we're just as hungry for them as the players are. And we study it, and we look at all the anomalies and the really out of left field decks or cards that we don't necessarily see. And we spend hours and hours and hours of not only just going through matchups after the draw show is done, but just seeing how these things are going to bounce off of each other and what decks we think are either going to surprise, what decks might be weakest in that entire field, and what in general are going to, just steamroll the competition. And sometimes it's something out of left field. Sometimes it's something that we figure, we expect it to be there in the capacity that it is. But McBee and I and the other casters and analysts, we get together, we review lists, we pick out our points, we look at statistics, matchups. Panda does a really good job of providing us with actual real statistics as to matchups and such like that. And beyond that, a lot of it has to do with just, intuition and interpretation of it, and hours and hours and hours of eating breakfast together, eating lunch together, and eating dinner together, and having drinks together. And we always are looking at those lists and comparing them and comparing notes. And also just, if we can corner one of the players and say, the hell are you doing bringing this? And then they essentially educate us why we're idiots, and then we go from there.
What do you think is gonna be like the hardest thing for the players to bring to this tournament, excluding Francesca? And what do you think that maybe might surprise us?
Okay.
By appearing?
I don't think there was any doubt that people would be bringing Francesca to the tournament. I believe that there was going to be, with that in mind, always what's left over is whatever is the second best deck is going to be the best deck at the tournament. So with Francesca banned down the board for the most part that we anticipate, you're going to see a lot of Syndicate is what I think that is good you're going to see. Not to give away too much because I don't know who's around us listening to this because this is being recorded before the tournament, before the draw show. But regardless, before deck lists are printed and whatever, I think that that's what's going to be there. The surprise factor is always interesting, and there's always going to be someone who shows up with this really, what might seem like jank, but it's not really jank, because there's obviously cohesion and it's a deck. The decks that they bring to these tournaments are not necessarily what they use to place on ladder and whatnot. Tournament play versus ladder play are completely different because there's a mind game that goes on of rock, paper, scissors. What you have to play what most people are against what most people are going to bring. And sometimes you target, sometimes you play what's strong. And I've seen the lists and there's going to be some surprises, and which is great. And when you ask these players, like, what the hell are you doing bringing this? And they look at you, they're like, no, you're the idiot. That's when you're like, okay, this is going to be pretty damn cool to see. Be it cards or leaders, there's always a surprise, and this challenger is going to be no different than that. And I'm very excited to see how it kind of pans out. There's always going to be the tried-tested, true, strong decks, but what the fireworks come from those who bring the really janky cards and the surprises.
Well, are you looking forward at this tournament the most?
What am I looking forward to this tournament the most? I think what I'm looking forward to the most is, from a tournament perspective, because I can honestly say that coming to Warsaw and seeing and meeting everybody is always amazing. And from that aspect, the fact that they've opened this up to the community to be involved and actually spectate and be very integrated into it, that to me is special. Coming from a background of organizing the Wild Hunt tournaments in North America, where we had dozens and dozens of people show up to celebrate and play the game. This now here shows that it's the same feeling, which was a lot of the excitement and joy that came from those tournaments and those efforts, years ago. What I'm looking forward to from the competitive aspect is that the lineup of people who are playing are really good, and they all have their own, for the most part, personalities that, and I don't want to say call them gimmicks, but they have their angles of attack that they prefer, and the players know it, the competitors know it. So there's always this mind game and this trying to one up each other of saying, I know that this guy prefers control, so I'm thinking that he's bringing this, so I'm going to bring this, but he might be on top of that. So all the players are really friendly with each other, and they like to jab and poke at each other to figure out and prod for information, and that's part of the fun, because I have the deck list, they don't, and I for those 2 days prior to the draw show, where you're holding all the marbles, and you're just watching them kind of poke and claw and dig for information, and you have it all. It's really exciting, and that's a good part. But I'm really just looking forward to when the coins are flipped and everybody starts playing cards, and to see those interesting matchups, the leaders that you don't expect to show up, the cards that you don't expect to hit the board. Those are the moments that I'm waiting for, and I'm very excited to call.
Now, imagine if you and the rest of the casters, Jaggerus, Panda, and McBeard, were in a tournament. Who would make it to the finals, and who would win? Okay, so
this is going to just harp on the whole meme that casters don't play Gwent. So this is obviously Fantasyland that we're talking about, because we don't play Gwent. No, but in reality, between the four of us, I remember talking or hearing McBeard talk about what kind of deck builders people are and what we prefer to play. And if I were to actually say who would win it, it would be Panda, because Panda is the most ruthless individual. He's a really nice guy, but when it comes to competition, he's the type of guy who's gonna tie your shoelaces together and laugh at you when you trip over yourself, and then call you like a filthy casual when you're on the floor crying. He is so damn ruthless. He brings net decks and laugh if you play anything original. That's the kind of guy he is. He's a win percentage kind of guy. I like to more or less innovate, kind of homebrew and go with it and say that it was my own. I find there's a lot of pride in that. And Panda's, you know, the type where he's like, why would you build your own car when there's a Ferrari right here? You know, like if that's how it's going to be. McBeard, so Panda's going to win it. McBeard is such a great analytical mind of the game. I think he would come in second. It would probably go to 5 games. Jagris and I would most likely just forfeit so we have better time to just drink and watch the shenanigans. Her and I would most likely just say, screw it, we're out. It would just be forfeit, you know, coin flip, forfeit, and then we'd be in the back eating pizza, drinking beer, and watching the game unfold.
And coming back to the actual players, who do you think is going to win Challenger 5?
Oh my gosh. Who is going to win Challenger 5? And what's great about this is that I don't know when this is going to get published. It might be published after or before the results. I don't know. So I might look like a genius or a complete fool. So I'm going to prelude this with, if I'm right, it's because I did a lot of analytics and thought about this very importantly, or very carefully, and really dug deep into choosing a winner. The winner of Challenger is going to be...
Moments of suspense.
I know. Well, see, that's funny because everything's rigged and predetermined, so I already know who won. No, that's not true. We don't do that anymore. No. The winner of Challenger is actually going to be Chezzy, and it's going to come out of nowhere, and it's going to be crazy. And the reason he's going to win is because I am his mentor and idol, and he looks up to me, and I coach him so well. So when he just absolutely crushes it, he's going to thank me and be very happy that I gave him so many years of tutelage.
All right, that's all. Thank you so much for sitting up with us. Thank you, the viewers, for watching. Thanks to the Maxi Hotel in Warsaw for lending us this beautiful library. And see you in the next one.